Hello all. Please confirm if I'm audible. So we'll start soon. Hello everyone. So welcome all. So today we have a special guest with us, Om Pandey. So he has extensive experience in the field of analytics. So Om is business intelligence engineer at the Amazon, and has worked on solving complex problems with the data across his career. So thank you joining us, Om. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Om, can you just tell me about yourself, like bit of like your journey, your current role, and your way you're working?
Sure. So I'm Om and I'm currently working at Amazon into analytics and data sciences. And I have close to 4.5 year experience working in the field of analytics and data science. I have experience working across various business verticals, including delivery operations, analytics, healthcare, drug development, clinical trials monitoring, compliance, procurement, regulatory affairs, and stuff. Where I've made like significant contribution into optimizing and solving various business problems throughout these areas with the help of my technical expertise. So yeah, that's all about me in short.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Om. So let's start with the very basic questions. Okay. So you can just tell us like what is generative AI, because generative is very quite popular nowadays, right? So what is generative AI and how it is differ from the traditional AI with respect to data analytics?
Right. So I think the right way to ask this question would be how is generative AI different from the conventional machine learning models?
Mhm.
So these machine learning models are mostly focused on the tasks related to prediction, classification, anomaly detection, and inferential statistics and stuff, where
Mhm.
we try to analyze and predict the outcomes based on the historical trends.
Mhm.
Whereas generative AI, those are like heavily trained models on like based on deep learning and GAN-based AI systems, and
Mhm.
they're trained on like very huge corpus of data, and they have capabilities to generate the data. So unlike regular ML models where they give an where they categorize the output or they predict the output, generative models have an ability to generate the text or image or any kind of content.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's how these differ from regular ML models, and since they are trained on such a huge amount of data, they are very great at understanding deeper context and generate insights and thorough explanations based on the free text form of input that we pass them. So they are like good at understanding regular English language, to put it in simple words.
Okay, so generally, like when we talk about generative AI, it's what you said. It's almost it's correct, right? So it's all about generating the model. So
Yeah.
when it comes to the data analytics, okay, so can you just give some of the applications or like practical applications, okay, where the generative AI that is specifically used in the analytics field?
Right. So it's being used at multiple fronts. It's not just limited to one specific side of analytics. So the very basic one I would say is firstly the code generation and automatic pipeline generation. So your model would be given sufficient context on what your entire data is about and how which language do we want our codes in. So
Mhm.
they'll be generating queries based on like the free text input. So say for example, if your model understands what your entire data is about, and then you ask that how much or why was the sales dropped, generate a query for that. So it will be able to generate a very basic Python code or a query for your free, the free text input that you have given. So that's like the very first application. Now, so this is something which people have already been using, and I think everyone has used it in some or the other form, where you just ask like a direct question and it gives you a direct query output or a code output or something of that sort. But now where so talking about next steps, so where the world is moving right now, specifically into field of analytics. So the next steps here are the models are able to interact with your data. So using agentic workflows. So now we are reaching a place where you can ask free text questions in the form like, why did the sales drop? And then it will be able to analyze the past trends based on in the back end. It will sort of run an agentic
Okay, you're
you know
talking about the RAG applications, right? So that is
like
being implemented in the product.
an
Okay.
agentic workflows. So it will like trigger like very specific operations in the back end. And there are tools, say for example AWS QuickSight. So they have right now they come with an integration where you can simply ask questions in real time in free form, in conversational format, like, okay, why is the sales dropping? So the model will give you some output, and then you'll ask, okay, explain me more on this. So the way how GPT works, where it's trained on the global data, for your very specific dashboards or very specific reports, you can do a conversational interaction with the model, and you'll be getting very specific insights related to your use case. Apart from that, so right now the decision making and everything was totally based on the reports and the insights we used to get from that dashboards. But now we have the capability to interact with that data. And apart from that, one more application. So the conventional models would miserably fail when it comes to understanding the free text input, say survey data, those kind of inputs. So we were heavily dependent on the customers to mark the data into in a structured format. Like, we'll be providing them only check boxes, or we'll be providing only the radio boxes. But now we can provide them free text. They can write everything, and the model will still be able to understand it. And to give you a very specific example, the older models were not really great at understanding sarcasm. So, say for example, if a person commented that, "Thank you, Indigo, for dropping me at Bangalore, but shipping my luggage to Delhi." So those models would assume that, okay, they'll reply with something like, "Okay, we appreciate your comments, etc., etc." So it won't be able to understand that it was a sarcasm-based text. But right now, I mean, these LLM models are really great at understanding sarcasm and uh, categorizing the outputs based on that. So yeah, this is where I would say this agentic workflows are sort of a game changer, and right now we are not there yet, but very soon we'll be there. So that's like
All
my
right.
personal.
Okay, so that's great because you're working in Amazon. Like a lot of people have the dream to get
Yeah,
into some good companies, right? So can you just give your like journey, like so how it started, like how what was the process? Just a brief overview of so that our audience will get to know. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, I mean this is for the audience. So if you have any questions, so that you want to ask the home, you can just send me in the chat. Okay. Yes, home, you can just proceed.
sure. So, I started my career at Mu Sigma, and that company I got through my college placements, and I worked there for close to 3 years, where we did like, all sorts of things which are possible in field of analytics. I worked on almost everything at Mu Sigma, and while I was at Mu Sigma, and I had like a really great trajectory going forward at Mu Sigma, but then I got this. A recruiter reached out to me through LinkedIn, and I just applied, and I got through the process. And what the process is entirely about having really great SQL skills, Python skills, statistics, learning, and ability to
So
solve
these are
business cases.
quite popular. Okay, the people think like the people who are into data analytics. Okay, they think, okay, do we need to learn machine learning? So can you just stress on that? Like, do we need to learn
Yeah.
machine learning if you want to get into data analytics or business analytics?
It's good to have. So if you're going for roles like applied scientist or data scientist or ML engineers, it's kind of a necessity. But if you're just, just for an entry point, it's SQL and Python are sufficient, and along with that, have a really good business acumen and the ability to solve case studies. So right now, how to give you like some insight on the current interview process throughout like all the companies. Companies don't care much about your code writing abilities, because we are at a place where any AI model can write code for you.
Generating it, yeah,
So
correct.
nobody cares if you are good at
So for that,
solving.
can I say like prompt engineering can play a very important role? Uh,
Yeah, prompt engineering will play. I mean, right now there are some companies who are replacing developers with prompt engineers. So this is like an ongoing
mhm,
trend.
mhm, mhm,
They're buying some huge models, and
mhm,
it's just one dedicated prompt engineer who understands how to write specific queries, specific prompts to
mhm,
generate like the entire code base. So that's one thing.
mhm,
But apart from that, what's more important is the ability to solve problems. So what they look for is your ability to identify real business problems, and
mhm, mhm.
like how will you approach your structured thinking, your structured problem solving ability. That is something companies focus on a lot, because we are not like the LLM models are not there yet, where uh, I mean, the models won't be able to replace that part. I mean, we are
Mhm,
not at
mhm,
that place yet. Maybe like in
mhm.
future, models are getting sophisticated day by day. So maybe
Correct.
near future we might get there. But right now, it's like having really good coding skills is good to have. I mean, it's sort of a mandatory. But again, it's not like how do I put it? So it's not like. But what's more important is, so what people think that it's just knowing really good SQL and Python is sufficient, but your business
Yeah.
acumen should be really
So this is
good.
what the misconception is. Okay, people think like data is all about only the SQL and Excel. Okay,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
apart from SQL and Excel, there are a lot of things like adding the business domain. I mean, like domain knowledge is also very equally important, right? So rather than just knowing the tools will not help them. Okay, all right.
Right. To give you like
So.
one analogy, I mean, there was a time when people used to solve mathematics problems, and they knew they would do it using abacus and all, and
Mhm, mhm,
people would flex about, I can do this calculation really fast, and like I
mhm,
can do like 4-digit multiplication in say
mhm,
5 seconds
mhm,
or 10 seconds. But
mhm.
we are at a place where that skill is important, but it's not as important as because we have calculators. So although it's
Correct.
good to know those things, but again, you need it's more like you should be really good at application part of it.
Mhm. So if I just ask you like what could be the top five skills, okay, so which is must to know like if they want to get into this field.
So the first one would be structured problem solving ability.
Mhm,
The second one would be structured communication, where you should be able to communicate your thoughts and approach really well.
mhm,
SQL, then Python, and having
mhm,
really good understanding of statistics. So these five
mhm,
skills are there, because machine learning is a lot based on stats. So I've seen
mhm.
people who claim to have a really good machine learning knowledge, but they don't understand statistics very well. So yeah,
Studies
it's
part.
good. Stats is like very very important.
All right. So generally in the data analytics, okay, we spend a lot of time in the data cleaning and the pre-processing, right? So can you tell us like about how AI, generative AI can help with this task? Okay. So is it like really they do use in the industries? I mean, like for the data cleaning or for the pre-processing steps?
So one thing is like these AI models are really expensive at this point. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so people avoid using it unless it's very necessary. So to call
Mm-hmm.
it out very explicitly, like the cost, I mean, you have to pay a certain cost for processing certain number of tokens. So if it could be solved easily with a very rule based logic, like writing a very short SQL script and all, there's no need to unnecessarily bring the data, I mean, LLM models into it. uh, but if it's really necessary, so there are some scenarios where we talk like, to talk specifically about synthetic data generation. So there might be some gaps in data, some columns might be missing in your data. So in those cases, if those values are really required, we'll try to augment those values, or we'll try to generate some synthetic data to fill in those values. In those
Mm-hmm.
places, we might use LLM. So industries are using it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so to give you one very specific example, if
Mm-hmm.
you find a product, say some chips ka packet, okay, if you have that product, and there are
Mm-hmm.
some three ingredients listed into it, and then the remaining ones are missing from your data.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could ask an LLM model that please try to fill in those additional details and try to identify like the I mean the missing list of ingredients. So say
Mm-hmm.
palm oil or say potato was missing entirely, and if the model can very easily figure out that if it's a potato chip, so potato must be there. So something of those sorts. So those kind of data augmentation. So I gave like a very lame example. I know I gave a
Yeah,
very
no,
lame
that's
example.
okay.
But,
Yeah.
so in these kind of scenarios, models would be able to fill in those gaps. But when it comes to treating null values, when it comes to removing outliers, there are way cheaper techniques, so nobody would unnecessarily spend that much cost into building that. But another trend that I've also seen is that people are trying to get into this technical adoption. They want to show that okay, we are using Gen AI into our product, even when
Mhm.
whether it fits or it does not fit into your use case. Like nobody cares. So
Mhm.
there's a website for uh, there's some college website, and people are unnecessarily putting in a chatbot into it for no
Mhm.
reason. Like, I mean, why would I go
Okay,
to a
just to
college
show that they
website?
have integrated the generative AI. Okay.
Yeah, just to show that. So that's another trend ongoing. So again, so it's I mean, it would be really good to find a balance, but yeah,
Mhm.
but yeah, based on what I've seen is that people don't unnecessarily use Gen AI because that's expensive.
Mhm. All right. So now let's talk about some of the challenges. Okay. So what do you think? Like, do all this technology like generative AI, LLMs will replace the data analyst in future?
I mean, it's a very broad statement. So,
Mhm.
if we talk about productivity gains, yes, definitely we have reached a place where the work of five coders or six coders could be done by just two or three coders,
Mhm.
if they have like access to good AI models. So
Mhm.
models like Anthropic, they have exceptional code generation ability.
Mhm.
Anthropic cloud models,
Mhm.
GPT. I mean, personally, I don't find it as great. Uh,
Mhm.
when it comes to code generation. But yes, there are models who, I mean, with the help of these models, we are reaching a place with massive productivity gains. So yeah, we are already there in that aspect. But when it comes to finding insights, we are getting there, right? So there are product managers. If I mean, if we build tools where, I mean, if all the tools are at some point integrated with these AI models and these agentic workflows, where you're only tasked. So what a analyst does is they'll analyze data, they'll find some insights, and they'll give the insights and some action plans based on it. But if a model is already able to do that, if it's able to
Mhm.
interact with it, in some sense, it can act as a replacement. But again, the models have this tendency to hallucinate and puke out very random information. So in those cases, it's always good to have a human in the loop and do some kind of sanity check at their end.
All right.
So
So,
again,
yeah.
it does
So,
not really answer
because we
the
are
question.
talking about the challenges, right? So, can you tell us like what could be these limitations when it comes to the generative AI? Some
So
limitations or some drawbacks? Yeah.
limitations of I mean integrating Gen AI into the current products, or limitations within the model itself. I mean, just trying to clarify that
No,
question.
no, just overall, just I'm asking overall, like if
Yeah,
I want to integrate generative AI, like what could be the some drawbacks or limitations currently we are facing in the generative AI field?
right. So one of them would be these models come in with a very high biases.
Mm-hmm.
So the models are trained on a very global data, and maybe globally some use case might be working in a certain way, but for your project, for your specific data, it might not be the case. So in that case, there's a high possibility that it would pick biases from the entire training data, basically the
Mm-hmm.
global models, that the foundation models that we have. So that's one challenge. The second one being the tendency of models to hallucinate.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger problem is that even if the model is hallucinating, there's no way for us to find out that. I mean, you cannot ask a model that is their output correct or incorrect, because any AI model will definitely say that my output is 100% correct. So
Mm-hmm.
there's even when you get the output, there is no way to know that whether it's correct or incorrect. So that's one biggest challenge. So that's the hallucination problem. The
Mm-hmm.
second one, I told you, the biases they come in with. Along
Mm-hmm.
with that, I also think that yeah, the models are really expensive. So that's another challenge. So when the data volume is very huge, people avoid using Gen AI. So that's like the third challenge. So, but again, we are getting to a place where models are getting cheaper day by day.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the challenges at the moment. But again, day by day, models are getting really sophisticated, and they're significantly improving. So it's not like the improvements we see over the years. It's not like incremental minor gains. It's like significant gains we are noticing year by year. So let's see where it
Yeah,
goes.
all right. So I just want to know now your challenge. I mean, like when you get into this field, right? So what are the challenges you faced? Okay, so that the people who are watching or the audience or the students, okay, so that they'll not do such mistakes, okay, so that when you come across such problem or some issues.
All right. So when I started working with my first project on LLMs and AI, my very first issue was writing structured prompts. So because interacting with GPT is one thing, but
Mm,
writing really good prompts is a whole different challenge. I mean, to
mm,
give an example,
mm.
a good prompt is something where
Just to cut
like
you,
a
can
good,
you just tell me the importance of prompt? Because you need to stress on this because people just think like they get into chat GPT or whatever the cloud or different models, okay, perplexity. They just type like regular, generally we use, right? How we chat. So how that is different from the prompt engineering, okay, what you're speaking
right,
about.
right.
Okay. So yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, okay, coming to your question. So, how it's different from prompt engineering is like when we talk to GPT model, there's an option that if the model is not giving correct output, you have an option to ask it again, clarify it again, and
Mm,
ask it to reiterate the requirement. But
mm,
when you're running it on huge volumes of data, there's no option to interact with
mm,
it.
mhm,
And good prompt is something where the answer should be consistent, the answer should make sense, and it should
mm,
be coherent with your requirement.
mhm,
So because in these scenarios we won't have an option to go back. There's no option
mhm,
to go back and fix it because it's working in a real time pipeline and there's no option to fix it. So that's like
mhm,
one big challenge writing a good prompt. So it should be like a good code. Like if you're asking it what's 5 factorial, it should be 120 no matter what. Same way, a
mhm,
good prompt is something where you're asking a very vague question like which is the best country in the world. There should
mhm,
be one specific answer to it. It should not be like every time it's giving a whole different answer. So
mhm,
maybe
mhm,
for your use case there'll be a whole context behind it to identify the best country,
mhm,
but your model should be giving just one answer every time. So that's what I'd say is a good prompt in this case. So there are various structured and standardized prompt engineering techniques,
mhm,
and for every individual model there are different prompting techniques. So whenever you're working on any use case, if you're using Llama, if you're using Anthropic, you should try to refer the documentation of systematic prompt engineering for those specific models. So
mhm.
yeah, writing great
So this
prompts
was
is,
your first challenge. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So you can just continue that, huh?
yeah. Yeah, and the second one would be integrating into your existing pipelines.
Mhm,
So, like I mentioned, these models take like a lot of time. So every prompt trigger would take some 5 to 6 seconds, and if you're
mhm,
working on volumes as huge as 1 lakh
mhm,
rows or 1 million rows every
mhm,
hour,
mhm,
it's very difficult to ensure that your model does not go out. So model
mhm,
outage is a very common issue. I mean, you'll often see that
mhm,
GPT goes down, or like these models go down for like 5 to 10 minutes, and then it becomes like a global news. But in your use case, although it won't be a global news, but it will have a significant downstream impact in whatever pipeline it's working. So integrating it with your pipeline is one challenge because these models come with a certain lag, and then there are
mhm,
various throttling issues. So
mhm,
yeah, integrating them well with your pipeline is first challenge. The next one would be, I would say, integrating it with your existing data.
mhm,
So I'll give you a very specific example, a very hypothetical example. So say there is a banking data where we have customer information, which
mhm,
is a very, very private information, and you cannot randomly upload it on any random server or any random website.
mhm,
Now, suppose, say, for example, HDFC Bank has a tie-up with ChatGPT, and they
mhm,
want to process their data on GPT. They want to tune a model on GPT server.
mhm,
So it might be against various policies to upload customer comments or private customer information on ChatGPT because it's not, firstly, it's not based in India, and then yeah, you'll never know how's that data gonna get used. So
mhm,
getting all those infosec approvals for training your model or tuning your model with private data, that's another challenge which is very industry specific. And
mhm,
in any industry where you work, you'll need those approvals. I mean, it does not matter if it's your company and the model is owned by your own company. It does not matter. You'll need this approval for your use case. So that's
mhm,
one huge challenge. And so for one of my use cases, we required multiple legal approvals to process private customer
mhm,
information on.
mhm, mhm.
So yeah, that's like
Then
one
we are
of the
telling
challenges.
it's not so easy to get started with directly accessing LLMs. Okay. Mhm,
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to access, it's easy to implement, but it's easy to integrate with your ongoing systems. So there are
mhm,
multiple legacy systems owned by multiple banks, multiple healthcare
mhm,
companies, and
mhm,
again, from technical point of view, it's not as difficult to integrate it, but
mhm,
from legal point of view, from operations point of view, it's extremely difficult to get those approvals
mhm,
because most of the companies work in a very different fashion. It's not like a startup where you'll just go across a desk and get any approval. It's like
Mhm.
all this process go by a series of approvals, and it takes like 3 to 4 weeks of time to just get a single approval. So yeah, that's like one
Mhm.
challenge, which is like
Mhm.
very industry specific.
All right. So I have a very popular question. Okay. So during our class, like when I'm taking the data analytics or business analytics, okay. So the
Mhm.
students they always get confused. Okay. So what could be the difference? Okay. What is that line? Okay. So when we say like business analyst or the data analyst, so can you just put a light on that? Yeah.
So again, those are like very overlapping fields.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, I mean, again, it's very specific to orgs as well. So in some companies,
Mm-hmm.
data analyst is a smaller post, and in some companies,
Mm-hmm.
and in the same companies, business analytics would be a bigger post. In
Mm-hmm.
some company, analysts work mostly just on data and nothing else. Like they're very focused on data, just
Mm-hmm.
finding insights on data, and that's it. Whereas business analyst work would be to interact with multiple clients and multiple stakeholders and
Mm-hmm.
find the business insights
So
of an.
generally they have the domain expertise, right? So the
Yeah.
people who are into business and okay. Mm-hmm.
Right. So maybe data analyst task would be to build a ML model, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
process the data or prepare some kind of analytical data set. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
business analyst's job would be mostly into understanding the business use case and
Mm-hmm.
taking it to execution, and then maybe presenting it to stakeholders, and then understanding the impact, assessing the impact. So yeah, that's how those works. I mean, those two profiles differ.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, so we can say in certain way that analyst is a very specific technical role, whereas business analyst is a kind of an overlap of business and data.
All right. Data storytelling is one of the generally like students won't think about this. Okay. So can you
Mhm.
just stress on this? Like, is it important to tell like how our data is like generally when they're dealing with the stakeholders or any clients? Okay. So how important the data storytelling is?
So I would say that is the most important skill
Mm-hmm.
for anybody. I mean, that's like a very basic requirement for anybody to get hired in any of the top companies, because your
Mm-hmm.
entire job is to communicate your analysis and communicate
Mm-hmm.
like firstly get the analysis, find multiple analysis, and then prepare story out of multiple analysis. So that's like one skill. That's the only skill for which any company would hire you for that role, because
Mm-hmm.
literally anyone can get the I mean, anyone can prepare the model, anyone can get the aggregated data views, anyone can get like quarterly sales or annual sales. Like it's that's something which is very straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Even any AI can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So at
So,
this point,
like, what shift do you see, like, generally, like, before the generative AI? I mean, like, when I say, like, before generative AI, I mean, like, generative is, I mean, like, it was there, right? But so
right,
now
right.
it's quite popular, right? So, what shift do you see, like, as soon as, like, now we have the concept of LLMs, a lot of models, okay? So, what could be the slight shift you see, like, the difference in the data analysis? Okay, this is because of generative AI. So, anything you want to highlight on that?
Yeah, so in terms of shift, I'd say the only thing that I've seen so far is the coding time has significantly reduced. So there
Mm-hmm.
used to be like a lot of grunt work in
Mm-hmm.
preparing an analysis. I mean, every time there would be like preparing data would be very difficult, and writing queries was. I mean, all these things are like plain grunt work. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
no uh, outcome out of it. I mean, certainly there is an outcome, but there's no. It's not as rewarding to remove the. I mean, if I tell you to remove the outliers, and if somebody tells that I spent 5 days in removing the outliers, so that's like plain grunt work with no direct business impact. So
Mm-hmm.
these things. So the amount of time people used to invest in these things has significantly reduced,
Mm-hmm.
because they are able to use. I mean, they're using AI to generate code. So that's the first shift I've seen. But when it comes to business insights, people still don't rely on LLM models,
Mm-hmm.
because those insights are not as great at this point. But people
Mm-hmm.
are using it to
So
get
we
the
have
idea.
nowadays we have that feature, no, in the Power BI, like where
Right,
we
right.
can access the kind of Q&A, I guess, right? So where it automatically generates some kind of
Right, right.
analysis, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but people are using it to get the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if I ask you to write a content for a specific website, so
Mm-hmm.
previously some content writer would think of something which he knows, and then he'll just present things in that manner. But now AI will give him three more ideas or four more ideas. So
Mm-hmm.
those ideas could be, I mean, integrated into your entire analysis and entire presentation. So, I mean, that's something where AI is helping people in like getting a thought process, in getting a better thought process and getting better
Mm-hmm.
ideas.
Mhm. All right. One of the question, I'm like, as a fresher or student who is just watching us, okay. So they'll have that, like, what could be the day-to-day task, okay. So if just wanted to know, this is what the day-to-day task would be like if someone is working as a business intelligence engineer or Gen I engineer, okay. What could be the day-to-day task?
So instead of day-to-day tasks, like the more accurate, question would be what's like sprint to sprint task or week to week
Yeah.
task.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
every time you'll get an analysis, like you'll be getting a problem statement.
mhm,
Where some stakeholder or some product manager would bring in a certain requirement, and they'll tell that we need an analysis around this.
mhm,
So, say for example, they'll give you a very specific location, very specific
mhm,
country, and they want
mhm,
to analyze a very specific problem around it, and
mhm,
that's all. So they'll be very open-ended, but yet close-ended. So they'll give you a goal assigned to it, like this is the goal we are
mhm,
trying, and
mhm,
so that's it. So this will be your overall problem. There's a certain goal
mhm,
you have to in this
mhm,
particular area,
mhm,
and we need all possible analysis on that.
mhm,
So that's the problem statement you'll get, and then the next step here will be firstly figuring out what all data sources to be used, because there are like multiple data sources, and some
mhm,
data sources are not very accurate or not very up to
mhm,
date,
mhm,
and there'll be issues with multiple sources. So we'll try to identify the relevant sources or the accurate sources
mhm,
relevant to this analysis, and then
mhm,
the next phase will be performing those specific data pulls, and then all the data cleaning, all the data
mhm,
pre-processing, and then we'll
mhm,
be generating some kind of insights out of it, and then we'll write a documentation on what kind of insights we found, and then any kind of supporting evidence from our
mhm,
data, all the
mhm,
statistical significances based on which we reached that conclusion, and
mhm,
then we'll be presenting our conclusion, our action plans, and our insights to our stakeholder, where we'll be very
mhm,
clearly discussing with them that this
mhm,
is what, then this is what we think, and it will be more of a brainstorming with them, that okay, they'll have some counter opinion on it, and then they'll ask for some additional analysis. We'll give them out those additional analysis, and then eventually whatever insights we give, it will be somehow implemented in their product to improve the efficiency of
mhm,
whatever operation was going on. So that's like a
mhm.
typical week or a typical sprint, how it goes for
Mhm.
any kind of business BI engineer or any analyst.
All right. So now let's talk about the data part. Generally, we like when we are learning, okay, we have data, sample data, Titanic data, Iris data, okay.
Mm.
So when it
Right,
is
right.
in real time, like how bad the data is, so of
Right.
course, we know, like when we doing some kind of analysis, it's not like how we think, right? So
Mhm.
can you just give some hint? I mean, like this some taking some of the examples and challenges when we come across data cleaning process or data transformation process.
So in most of the scenarios, I'd say 4 out of 10 times the data is really bad, and
Okay.
we have to get alignments from
So
various
how
people.
frequent the data change? Like for example, if today I'm doing some analysis, okay. So tomorrow is it like we have any data, new data schema or anything like
It's
changes with that?
No, schema won't change it. It's always an incremental load. So, say,
Mm-hmm.
for example, if you're trying to analyze sales of a particular department overall, so they'll like every week or every day there'll be new data getting appending at the bottom of it. So it's not like the data schema will entirely change. Just
Mm-hmm.
that multiple times we come across data quality issues,
Mm-hmm.
and multiple times we come across data understanding issues. So like there are some columns where there's no specific alignment between multiple teams. So uh, multiple data sources would have like the same column with different
Mm-hmm.
understanding, and maybe like different values at times. So that's like just one example which I gave you. And maybe at times the values won't be same. The values might be same, but when you do an aggregation, it will turn out that okay, in one data set the annual sales is this much, whereas in the other one it's 20% higher or 20% lower. So
Mm-hmm.
these kind of data issues are very very common. Apart from that, so these are like the typical issues which we come across, and then
Mm-hmm.
apart from that, uh, when it comes to big data, the query processing time is really huge, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever work you do, like maybe like a couple of hours, you'll realize a couple of hours later you'll realize that okay, I made this mistake. So maybe
Okay.
do it again, and then maybe 1 hour later you'll come to know that okay, this query was wrong. Whatever value I'm
Okay.
getting, it
Okay.
makes sense.
So you
So
need
I'll
to
have to.
wait for that, okay, for the wrong answer also.
Yeah, naturally. I mean, if you're processing say 1 TB of data on a cluster, so it won't like
Correct.
work in milliseconds. So yeah, there'll
Correct.
certainly be a wait time on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there
All
are
right.
times to write really optimized queries, because if you write bad query, so that 1 hour query
How
will become
SQL is
4 hours.
important? Like, is it like SQL when it comes to topics? Okay, generally what we learn like joins, the Windows functions. Okay, so how important? Like, if I just specifically ask, okay, this topic is must. This is what the must topic. Every the analyst or the people who are getting into this field, you should know aware of this.
Okay, SQL is extremely important. Reason being
Mm-hmm.
that I think 90% of the data that we use is stored on some of the other SQL
Mm-hmm.
database, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to retrieve that data and then you have to pre-process it. And only after like a series of SQL operations, you'll be able to have that data in any kind of consumable format. And
Mm-hmm.
certainly, if there's like we have like 1 TB worth of data and we need to bring it down to say 5 rows or 10 rows
Mm-hmm.
analysis, in that case, SQL is like a must. And knowing good SQL helps a lot because the more optimized queries you write, the better you are with indexing, the better you are with say writing optimized queries, doing
Mm-hmm.
optimized join. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the lesser grunt work you'll have to go throughout your entire project or entire analysis.
All right. So before wrapping our session, okay, I just wanted to ask, like, what could be the advice you want to give our learners? Any
Uh,
suggestions or advice? Any tips?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very it's a open-ended question. I mean,
Yeah.
anything in specific you're trying to
Yeah.
get at.
In terms of learning, in terms of doing internship or
Right.
the roadmap or career path. Okay. In overall, general. Yeah.
Okay. So in general, I'd recommend if you're a college student, you should try to do as many internships and work with as much data. I mean, as much good quality of data or maybe real-time data as you can, because what I've noticed is so in my previous company, Musicma, I used to interview like a lot of folks. So I have taken like
Mhm.
50 plus interviews in that company, and what
Mhm.
I've seen is like 90% of resumes will have that similar Boston housing pricing
Kind of.
data, the
Yeah.
Titanic data
This is
set.
what the
So
trend is.
it
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
so anyone who sees that resume, they'll just cringe out on it, and they'll just, I mean,
Okay.
they simply assume that okay, he has not done anything.
Okay.
So the only and obviously nobody will get access to good quality of data. So certainly there's no way for anyone to boast
Yes, to
about.
access the real time data as well.
Yeah, so there's no way for anyone to boast about or brag about their analytical skills. So
Mm-hmm.
the only way is that you work on really good quality of data,
Mm-hmm.
get some internship. That's where you'll get access to some good data sets. The
Mm-hmm.
other way is like there are a lot of open data sets available by various websites. Say
Mm-hmm.
for example, there are multiple healthcare datas. On insurances and then real world medicine data, then you'll find a lot of financial data just
Mm-hmm.
lying around. So you can perform like your own analysis on it and then find some actual insight. So there are
Mm-hmm.
some activities ka data, which is like the real data, not like the one you find on Kaggle, because
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I mean, even if you have done good work on it, nobody will appreciate it because I mean it's very easily accessible. Anyone can search it, and anyone can validate that if it's your work or somebody else has done it. And whatever you put on your resume, if it's available on Google search, I mean it's not going to be.
Correct.
So one thing, try to get as many internships as you can. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you're trying to put things on your resume, don't mention things like I made a notebook or I made a Jupyter. You should have some kind of solution hosted somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
something presentable and something of real value, not something
Mm-hmm.
like it does not make sense that you're a college intern and then you did a Titanic data analysis and then you mention how you optimized 20% sales, etc. It does not make sense at all. So people try to
Correct.
write just to make the resume pass through the ATS systems. They just try to write
Uh-huh.
random in the resume.
Okay. Okay.
Just try to make write things which make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. So just yeah, try to get
Okay,
access
real
to
time projects and internships. Okay.
real-time project, actual data, something hosted online,
Mm-hmm.
something presentable, and something that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's wait for audience. Like if they want to ask any questions,
Sure.
then we'll end it. Okay.
Okay, all right.
All right, Om. Thanks. Thank you for all your
Thank you.
insights and suggestion steps. Okay. So thank you for joining, and as I think it will be helpful for many people. Okay. So thank you for joining.
Sure,
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, guys. Okay. Bye. All the best. Okay. Take care.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye bye.